my dear students, as we are discussing about test validation, we need to know that what are the different types of validity, or what are the different types of validation procedures. Types of validation studies. The uniform guidelines recognize three specific methods of determining validity. There are a number of ways of determining validity, but here we are discussing only three major kinds of validity studies. So, number one is called as criterion related validity. What is criterion related validity? It is very important to understand the concept. Criterion related validity refers to a statistical relationship. Keep this thing in mind that it is a statistical relationship, that you have to analyze the relationship between two things: scores on a test or some other selection procedures. We are not here too much focusing only on the test. Here we are talking a little bit in general. That tests are one kind of employment procedures, but instead of a test, you can use the employment interview. You can use some other selection procedures. You can use assessment centers. So, but assume that you have some scores on a test and any other selection procedure and the actual job performance of a sample of workers. So, I will repeat it for you, that criterion related validity refers to a statistical relationship between scores on a test or some other selection procedure and the actual job performance of sample of workers. So you have to choose a sample of workers and you have to draw a statistical relationship between the score on the test and the actual job performance of those workers. And that would tell you that how your test is valid. For example, a study proving that college graduates perform a particular job better than high school graduates would be criterion related. So if you are comparing two groups, if you are comparing the success of the college graduates with the other school graduates, then you can tell that which one is performing better on some particular concepts or the aspects of the job. So it would be a criterion related validity. Another validity is called as content validity. Content validity pertains to selection procedure that test a sample of significant parts of a particular job, that is a demonstration that the content of selection procedure is representative of important aspects of job performance. For example, you are judging the computer skills of any administrative officer. And if you are judging the computer skill of administrative officer, it is very much necessary that computer skill must be the important component or must be the important aspect of the administrative officer. And if it is not an important aspect of their job, it is not a fun to test the computer skills of the administrative officer. So that would be called as a content validity. For example, the analysis of a computer skill of an administrative officer or assistant position would constitute a content validity study. Means the computer skill must be the important component of their employment testing procedure if you are going to hire administrative officer for your company. Number third, that is called as a construct validity. It describes a relationship between something believed to be an underlying human trait or characteristic. This is very interesting, that you have to determine the underlying trait, the underlying characteristics to perform any job in a successful manner. For example, honesty might be such a characteristic that if you are honest, you would be better accountant, you would be better cashier in a bank. So honesty might be a such characteristic, and the presence and measure of which might be assessed by a given selection procedure. So whenever you have to hire a cashier in any particular bank, it is better to test their honesty. It is better to have an honesty test. And if honesty test would let you know that person is honest, obviously such kind of employment tests need to be an integral part of your selection procedures to hire any cashier in the bank. So that would be considered as a construct validity, because it is determining the underlying trait of any particular individual, of any particular post in the organization. So for all three methods, the uniform guidelines specify that cutoff point scores must be, that is a very important point which I want to make, that cutoff point, cutoff score must be set so as to be reasonable and consistent with normal expectations of acceptable proficiency within the workforce. My dear students, in each and every context there is a workforce, right? And every workforce has some acceptable proficiency, right? And they have some normal expectation. So your test, you are set so as to be reasonable and consistent with the normal expectation of acceptable proficiency within the workforce. It should not be so high, it should not be so less. So it must be within the reasonable range. That is very much important if you want to use all three methods of validity, including construct validity, criterion related validity, and content validity.